We will get started. I'd like to call this meeting of the West Allis West Milwaukee School District to order, please. If you could please rise for the pledge. And Mr. Schultz, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All right, Suzette, can we please do roll?
Yes. Ms. Klug is excused. Mr. Schultz.
Present.
Mrs. Kaiser is excused. Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Ustruck.
Here.
Mrs. Justum. Mrs. Justum, are you present? Mr. Sikich.
Present.
Mr. Keller.
Here.
President Emmons.
Here. Proper notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Do we have any changes or modifications to tonight's agenda, Dr. Lexman?
I have no changes.
All right, we move on to item 6 of our agenda this evening, our public comment. If you are here for public comment and you are online, if you would please put your name into the chat. And as a reminder to all people for public comments, you have up to 3 minutes to address the board. The board will not debate or respond during public comments, but whether a response will be sent before the next board meeting. We do have public comments here in the room. Right, I'm going to go to the public comments podium, then you can go first. And then just name and address them, please, for the records.
Good evening. My name is Torrin Misko. I was in front of the board last week. My address is 12855 West North Lane in the city of New Berlin. I did address the board in regards to a petition to alter the school district boundaries. In my presentation, I think I presented some reasonable requests for my petition, starting with sense of identity, with myself living in the city of New Berlin and trying to get it within the school district of the city I reside in. Also, my desire for in-person learning. I would like us to move in that direction. I know we just started here in West Allis recently, but I've seen a lot of school districts doing it successfully 5 days a week for the majority, if not all, of this last school year, and also in following CDC recommendations and evidence. And then finally, due to my transportation situation, where my wife is unable to transport my children to school, and then the nature of my work and my inability to reliably transport them to and from school, I am left with no other options other than to petition the school district for the school boundary change. Because even if I try open enrollment or private school, I'm not going to be able to take advantage of the transportation needs that I have. And the only way for me to do that through the district, I want to join the New Berlin School District in this case, would be through this petition of the school district boundary. I did request in my testimony last week, since the school district has an opportunity to respond to my testimony and information, I'm not afforded that same opportunity to respond to what the school district has to tell the school board. And I've been told I'm not allowed to do that. That's why I'm here in front of you for public comments. I think that's unfortunate. I don't know of any other boards where someone's on the agenda and isn't able to respond back from what the other side is. The school district has that opportunity available to them, and to not allow that to the resident making a petition, I think is unfair. And I don't really thoroughly understand why I'm not able to respond to that. But that's why I'm taking this time today in my 3 minutes to just let the board know I requested it last week. I would request it today because last time, as I mentioned in my testimony, the school district said some things that weren't necessarily accurate. I brought that case law now in front of the school board, and I'd like the opportunity to respond to that if that's still the case. And that is all I wanted to mention to the school board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we have Jennifer Paulus.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Paulus. We reside at 2034 South 95th Street. We have a daughter, a fourth grader at Irving. And as a parent, I just wanted to express my concern with this hybrid model and students only going 2 days a week. As a teacher in another district, I understand the concerns related to COVID, but other districts are doing it successfully. And I just think it's time to get the kids back to 5 days a week, having them learn on their own with minimal teacher contact 3 days a week. I'm just concerned about the progress they're going to make, how they're going to perform on the state tests. And I just think it's time. Other districts have figured it out. And if we can't get them back in, then we need to figure out how to get them more time with the teachers, because learning completely on their own 3 days a week, that's not adequate. And that's all.
Thank you very much. Janine Bagley.
Janine Bagley, 2826 South 83rd Street. I have twins at General Mitchell. They're in first grade. They ask every day when they can go back to real school 5 days a week. Just going to say the same thing again. Every other district seems to do it, but we're not. We're suffering. The 2 days is great. And then it's like on Monday, they almost have to get reacclimated to being in school and to learning in person. So then it's almost like you only get Tuesday in school, and then you are virtual Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then on Wednesday, they even shut it down so that you're only virtual until 1:30. And then from 1:30 until 3:30, you have independent time. This is ridiculous. We need them back in school 5 days a week. We need it now. We can't wait for another month or until April or whenever you guys are thinking about it. You're punishing our children. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have anybody else listed for comments in the chat. I will just wait another second here just to make sure that nobody else signs in. Okay, we'll move on then to item 7, the Superintendent's Report. Dr. Lexman.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everybody. We'll start with 7.1, which is our returning to school update. So I got to change my screen here a little bit. Okay, so this is our update for the board, February 22nd, 2021. Like we do with each of these, a little bit of an agenda for the presentation, and then at the end, we'll answer questions that the board may have. So again, I'll touch on our guiding principles. Then we'll take a look at the external health metrics, a little update there, and the internal health metrics. And again, our returning to school plan, and at least from the last time the board met to consider the revisions, is based on both internal and external metrics. Then we're going to look at the latest on internal active quarantine and monitoring. So that's a week by week set of numbers. A little bit on where we are with teacher absences, which has been really promising and good news. Then a little bit of looking at the new CDC guidance on reopening schools and the metrics that they're proposing. They're not that different from what we've been tracking, but I thought it'd be worth taking a look at it. Then a little bit of thoughts, and even though this is not a decision-making meeting, this is just an update, but a little bit of thoughts of what we'll be discussing at our next regular meeting on March 8th. So it's the opportunity the board asked to review where we are, and then to make any changes that they think are appropriate at that time. And then a little bit on vaccination planning and next steps. So again, guiding principles, safety and well-being. We've been focused on that all the way through this. Learning that works for all, and it's been less than perfect. We've acknowledged that all the way along, but we've tried really hard. Deidre's team has tried really hard to build learning experiences that are supporting kids, being responsive and flexible, and we've made changes to our plan, and that's the flexibility. And then it's got to be practical to implement. And I'll touch on a little bit of that. Even within the CDC guidance, there's some conflicting recommendations about getting kids back and having all kids back and having all kids socially distanced, which can't happen in reality in schools. There's only so much space. But practical is an important part of implementing any next steps. So where we are with the latest external health metrics, things are improving. And so we've got over a period of a few weeks here now, some declines in the COVID burden status rates, and metric 2, which is West Allis, our more local metric. When it goes below 100, that'll actually change color, so it'll turn yellow, and that starts to be within the range of the original plan to move phases. So that's encouraging. And here, we're actually under 5, which is kind of the benchmark indicator, 5% positivity rates, but they're yellow because the recommendations are that we should see 2 weeks in a row of trending numbers, and we don't here in metric 4, the West Allis number, even though both are below 5%, it's encouraging. So things are moving in the right direction with our county and community metrics. Then our internal metrics, we're tracking, darn it, very sensitive. Our percent positive, and again, this is the percent positive or a case rate. It's a 14-day average of all known positives among staff and students. And I've had some parents reach out in the last week or so and in email discussing this particular metric and asking, well, it's consistently under the 1.5%, which says we should be in phases 4 and 5. And the answer is that's true. But again, our plan is built on internal and external metrics, and we haven't quite hit the external metrics yet to move phases. Then our active quarantine and monitoring, this has gone up, especially the students, and that was expected when we moved to phases 2 and 3, that we would have some more contacts and more possibility of internal spread, meaning spread within schools or exposure within schools. And so quarantine is really more exposure. And so that number has gone up a bit. And we've worked through just a couple times where it was just larger groups of kids that we needed to do contact tracing with and to get letters out in quarantine. So it is still smaller than we had projected. We thought there'd be more, which is really good news for us. It means people are following all of the recommended mitigation strategies. Kids are really doing a great job wearing masks. We get reports from principals with even our high school kids that are following all the arrows on the floor. And so it's all one-way traffic to eliminate kind of kids breathing on each other as they pass in hallways. And all of those strategies seem to be helping us. So I just want to thank everybody, for following all the mitigation strategies, because it really is making a difference. It gives us some confidence of how we might move forward. A little bit on teacher absences. And this has been a really interesting surprise for us, especially given that we're in February. And February is a month that is typically a challenge for us in getting substitute teachers and enough of them, because teacher attendance and it's, there's less normal flu because of COVID mitigation strategies. So that's contributing to some of this. But in most schools, since we started phases 2 and 3, we're running at about 100%. Teacher attendance, and that really is promising for us. Here and there's a teacher absent, and so we've had some schools dip to a 95%. The lowest rate so far was in just a few days ago at Nathan Hale, and they dipped to 94.4%. So there too, that's really good for us. And like I said, this is higher than typical for February. And so here too, I just really want to appreciate the commitment of our professional educators and encourage everybody to keep showing up for the kids, use the mitigation strategies, because this is really promising. So it's just another little kind of bit of information that I think helps us make some decisions on March 8th of how we might go forward. So then CDC Guidance, they've introduced a new set of colors. So it's one more thing to try to sort out, and if we're going to shift to this as our metrics dashboard or not. But like I said earlier, it's similar in as much as they are doing total new cases per 100,000 people in 7 days, and ours right now is a 14-day average, and we get those data points from Milwaukee County and from the West Allis Health Department. I've asked our health department if they could start to produce the West Allis West Milwaukee data as a 7-day average, so we really get some apples to apples comparison, because where we are right now, and I'll show this in a minute here, with the CDC metrics and guidance of what kind of phase of learning to be in tied to the metrics, there's kind of a conflict between the two data points, which they also have guidance on what to do if you have conflicts and you're not in one column like everything is in blue. So that's one data point, which is the new cases per 100,000. And then our percentage, this is really positive test rate. And this too is a 7-day average. We've been also tracking 14 days. But again, the standard that I talked about a little earlier, where we are now under 5%, is the same standard that the CDC has set. So that at least is consistent. So where we are with some of this right now, so Milwaukee County, with the 7-day, we can get that right from the CDC website. So the Centers for Disease Control has a really smartly set up site now where you put in the state, you put in the county, and you get all the data. And so we are right now at the 79.94. That's as of today. So I updated that from Friday where it was at 93. So that too is coming down, but it puts us in orange, right? So we're not in the lowest levels where they recommend 5 days a week of school, except we are for Milwaukee County, they're at 3.79. Again, this number is different than the one I just reported earlier because this is a 7-day average versus a 14-day average. So the 14-day has some higher numbers built into the average than the 7-day, right? So now this is where we have the conflict between what kind of learning mode should we be in if part of our data says we're in low transmission and part of it says we're in substantial transmission, not the highest. So here's what, if the indicators are not aligned, the actions we take should be aligned to the higher threshold, right? So that would mean we would follow the learning mode they're recommending for orange, all right? Is the way to understand that. And I've already said that, this is now the 7-day average, and here's another link to the CDC data tracker. So here's what they advise. So in blue and yellow, K-12 schools open full in-person instruction and physical distancing of 6 feet or more to the greatest extent possible, right? And in some of our schools, that may be possible when most of the kids return. Again, we'll continue to have an all virtual option, even if we move to phases 4 and 5, and that is also recommended by the CDC, that we give parents that option, that choice. But when we're in orange and or red, elementary schools in hybrid learning mode or reduced attendance, physical distancing of 6 feet is required. So that's what we're doing right now. And so we're actually, our current method of instruction is aligned to the CDC guidance based on our data points and what they're advising. And middle and high schools in hybrid learning mode, which is exactly what we're doing. They make a distinction between elementary and middle and high school because there is some evidence that it spreads far less among younger kids. And so if we were to move back to high, they're recommending that, it's virtual instruction only for middle and high school, and that elementaries could still be in hybrid mode. So the dilemma here is that, part of our data sit in orange and part of our data sit in blue. And we're following right now, without really knowing the latest CDC guidance, we've aligned with it pretty well. And I'm hopeful that as things continue to improve and vaccines become more available and the impact of that on community spread starts to be noticeable, that we're ready to move to phases 4 and 5. So these are the mitigation strategies I've already talked about. So the ones that they're really pushing hard in their latest guidance: universal and correct use of masks. So we're doing that. And kids and staff have been really good about it. Physical distancing, we're doing that. Hand washing and respiratory etiquette. So we've been teaching all of that with kids, and we have all the hand sanitizer, the hand sanitizing wipes, all the hard surface wipes, all of those kind of things. So the cleaning and maintaining healthy facilities. So that includes the ozone machines and all of those things, as well as the air exchange rates. And then contact tracing in combination with isolation and quarantine. And we do that. And it's all been in collaboration with our health department. So the prioritized one, so for in-person instruction, there's 2 that they say we should really prioritize. So if we're moving to in-person, universal and correct use of masks, right? So that we will continue that. And then physical distancing should be maximized to the extent possible, right? So that will be a challenge. If the board approves that we would move to phases 4 and 5, on March 8th, or if we've met the metrics that the board has already approved, meaning both internal and external metrics that the board has already approved to move us to phases 4 and 5, we'll be communicating quite often to families that physical distancing will not be the same as it currently is, right? We just don't have the physical space to keep students 6 feet apart in all of our classrooms. And so some schools it'll work better than others, but every physical footprint is different. And that's the reality, and that's recognized in the CDC guidance. That's why they keep saying should be maximized to the extent possible, knowing that it may not be perfect in every situation. Then a little bit of our thoughts on March 8th, and this is just a little bit of foreshadowing, because again, like I said, this is just an update, not a decision-making moment for the board. But I'm assuming our metrics and the recommended CDC metrics continue to improve. So let's stay hopeful that things continue to get better in the metrics. Then we want to make sure that we provide a little bit more lead time for employees to access vaccinations. And again, educators in Wisconsin become eligible to get in line for a vaccine starting March 1st, so next week, Monday. And we've communicated last Friday to all employees, encouraging them that on any place that we can sign up as educators to get in line for a vaccine, we sign up in as many places as we can. And when we get a call, that we're going to do everything we can to support each other, if it's during the workday, to cover people, to cover each other, to make sure everybody that has the opportunity gets vaccinated as soon as possible. Then we want to maintain our mitigation practices. We need some time to communicate the changes to social distancing. And then I think we probably would want to give families the opportunity to change method of instruction. There may be some families that feel comfortable with social distancing, but when we move to phases 4 and 5, maybe they're no longer comfortable and they'd like to go back to virtual. And I think we want to reach out to families to provide that opportunity. Then our internal conversation, we've been discussing beginning elementary 4 days per week on March 22nd. Now that's a little bit before spring break. Earlier in my updates, I've talked about after spring break as kind of the next natural kind of break in the cycle of a school year. But we're thinking starting elementary a little bit earlier. Again, it aligns to the CDC guidance around getting elementary students back in schools. It gives us a week to try this on with more students in buildings. Then it gives us a week of spring break to make any adjustments, right? So we think it's just a smart use of the way the calendar is playing out for us. And then we begin secondary 4 days a week on April 8th. And that is the Thursday after spring break. And Monday of that week is part of spring break. Tuesday is a professional development day and election day. So we've placed PD days on when there's voting in schools, and that was a safety consideration. And then that Wednesday is a virtual day. So we would start with a Thursday, Friday, the secondary, and then we have a weekend to make any adjustments to plans. So we think that kind of lines up well for us in terms of trying to move to phases 4 and 5. We would still recommend that Wednesdays remain a virtual learning day. And the reason for that is it gives us another day cleaning, really making sure buildings get cleaned well over weekends and on Wednesdays. And then also for the number of teachers that will be teaching both in-person and virtual students, to allow them a day to really make sure that they're meeting the needs of their virtual students. And we think since the CDC recommends an all virtual option continues through the rest of this year, that we've got to structure time in for our professional educators to manage all of that at the same time. So a little bit on vaccinations. There's less news here than the rest of the presentation. So we meet with our health department bi-weekly. So that's myself and Beth. And as things start to look like they're going to open up their Genius sign up for educators or sign up Genius for educators, that we'll start bringing our nurses in as well. But the second bullet there is the most important one on this page. Vaccine is limited. I think everybody knows that and has heard that over and over and over again. And even though starting next Monday, we're able to sign up for a vaccination, it doesn't mean the vaccine is necessarily going to be there right away. I think it's important that our school, to know our school nurses, our wellness center do not have access to vaccinations, right? They're not, our school nurses are not providing vaccines. Our wellness center will not be a vaccination site, right? That's going to be our local health departments, healthcare providers, and pharmacies is where we'll start to get access. So we, as supplies increase, and supplies of the vaccine, obviously, we have contingency plans in place so that employees can take time off from work to get vaccinated at short notice. And so we anticipate this looking a couple of different kind of scenarios. At the beginning, it's likely that as we sign up in multiple places, that there's a random call that there's a vaccine available. I'm the next person on the list. I have to be there in an hour. Okay, so in my role, it's flexible enough where I can do that. I don't need somebody to cover me for an hour, but a teacher will. And so our contingency plans are such that principals are going to be ready to provide coverage for employees that get those kind of very quick, short notice phone calls to come and get vaccinated. And then as vaccine becomes more available, and like I said, the health department will launch their Sign Up Genius for our employees. And we've talked about them doing special clinics with when there's enough vaccine. And we talked about Wednesday afternoons because that's a flexible day for almost everybody. That they would run a clinic just for educators in our school district. And so that's a possibility. And if we don't get there, but they have some flow of vaccine, we've talked about the potential of, closing one school per day over a number of days to allow employees to access the vaccines that way. But again, we're encouraging employees to sign up wherever there is the opportunity. And then finally, next steps. So far, so good with phases 2 and 3. We've had minimal quarantine requirements to date. And I've mentioned that earlier, less than we anticipated at this point. Again, we think it's because our students and our employees are doing a really good job with mitigation practices. We are going to again review telecommuting approval requests on March 1st. This is something that Jeff Thompson and his team have done on a kind of rotating basis. So telecommuting, again, is the opportunity for teachers with underlying health conditions or family health concerns to be able to work from home. There is a application and approval process that they have to work through, but we're trying to be as flexible, like our guiding principles, flexible as possible to support our teachers. ACT is going to look a little bit different. And Deidre, if you want to jump in on this one, that's great. But right now we're anticipating that it is March 3rd. It has to be in person, face to face. Right, so what we're proposing is that we'll make that day for 9th, 10th, and 12th graders an asynchronous day. And so that we can get all of the 11th graders in, families can exempt, but all of the 11th graders in and make testing groups very small. So we keep good social distancing. We use as many teachers as are available to proctor the ACT. So Deidre, I don't know if you want to add anything more there.
Yeah, just that although our families do have the option to exempt out, we want to remind people that this is an opportunity to take the exam for free. And if there's any intention on going forward to a post-secondary opportunity, you want to take as many chances as you can to take those tests. Many of the colleges are taking students without them in the last year and this year, but we don't know how long that's going to last. And also, they're frequently asking for the ACT if they're deciding between two, candidates. So students are getting off of wait lists at post-secondary institutions sometimes with that score. So we still want to make that opportunity available and as accessible as possible. So our students who have chosen virtual, by the 9th, 10th, and 12th graders being asynchronous, we can have enough proctors that, again, the group size should be 2 to 3, sometimes up to 5 in a space. And then you really can spread kids out well more than the 6 feet and still administer the exam safely. So that is coming up shortly. Both of the comprehensive high schools have already communicated to families around what's going to happen next. And then we're just making those adjustments to the schedules right now with the teachers and making sure that we can get everybody certified to proctor.
Dr. Lexman, March 3rd is a Wednesday, so that would be a virtual day anyway.
I apologize. That should say March 2nd.
Okay.
My apologies.
I thought it was originally a Tuesday, so that's why
it always is a Tuesday. Yeah, we were hoping it would be the Wednesday, but putting it on the slide did not wish that to be true because it would have been a lot easier on the scheduling. But
it's easier.
Yeah, it's the Tuesday. Yeah.
But no, thanks, Stephanie, for catching that. That's good. Then the board knows that we're scheduled to discuss the plan and consider moving to phases 4 and 5 on March 8th. Again, that's if we haven't met the both internal and external metrics, and it's possible by then. And then more information to come on vaccinations. And as soon as we have information, we will share it with all of our employees. So that's the update this evening. I'll stop sharing, and then Stephanie, you can take a look if there are questions.
Board members, Noah?
Hi, yes, thank you for that update. I just had a question. You had mentioned in your update that we would leave Wednesday as a virtual only day. Initially, that was only for secondary. Has that been changed to be elementary and secondary, that Wednesday would be a virtual only?
It's a good question. You're right, Noah. That was intended to be just secondary. So I think we would have to look again at, if we open up the method of instruction choice, does that shift into more virtual in elementary? So that would influence the decision. And then I think we're going to have to take a look at how many teachers in elementary, because it's fewer in elementary than in secondary, are teaching both virtual and face-to-face. So it's a really good question. I think we're going to have to drill into it a little more deeply to see if we actually need that for elementary or for all elementary teachers, because it may be that it varies by teacher or by school. But I think if we're able to go back 5 days per week, I think that's preferable and certainly is aligned with the CDC guidance.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. I think combination of things, the fact that it's going to be preferable for parents so they don't have to have one day that they're trying to have to be home with their child, but also it would follow what the CDC is asking for, as long as we can, provide the support to the staff so that if there are teachers who are having to do both, that maybe we have some extra supports for them if that doesn't work out within a building or a classroom. But I just want to make sure it's clear, because everything we've communicated prior is 5-day elementary, 4-day secondary.
Yes. Yep. No, great question.
Other board member comments? Dr. Lexman, so because we are meeting again on March 8th, and you did mention a few times that it's possible the metrics will be met prior to March 8th, how would that be communicated to the board and then going forward if we hit those metrics before that?
So, well, if we're hitting the metrics, we'd communicate that to our families, to the board right away. That says it looks like we're ready to move forward. We had communicated earlier on, we'd like to give at least a 2-week notice. I think we would still start aiming kind of at the timing that I described with March 22nd and April 8th, because at March 8th, or about 2 weeks out from March 22nd, it's amazing how fast it starts to go. But I think we'd follow the similar timeline, and unless things improve dramatically a week from now, which would be very encouraging, and then we'd start probably to shift that timeline. But that would be the minimum is a 2-week notice for families to start to make the adjustments. And we'll need a little bit of at least a week to turn around the method of instruction survey again. I mean, we've done it a couple times, so we know how to do that now. So that would take some communicating as well. So that's kind of where we are with monitoring it and making any shifts should we meet the internal and external metrics.
Great. Any other board member commentary? All right, we'll move on to the next item.
Great. So the next one is the legislative update. And so there's a joint letter was sent to Senator Kuyanga and our state representative, Sanfilippo. It was from myself and the superintendent of Wauwatosa Schools, Dr. Frill Ertl. It was sent in response to a letter that the board received, very strongly encouraging us to return to entirely in-person learning. And we tried to make our best arguments. I did receive a letter back from State Representative Sanfilippo, and he took some issue with the way we approached it, which I fully expected. But I think we had to present kind of where we are. And ultimately, this is a set of local decisions between school district leadership and school boards. And it continues to be that until there's, any kind of changes at the state level. But I just did want to recognize that, we responded publicly, we did receive a response, and we're going to continue to move forward with our plan and try to align it now to CDC guidance. Tony Evers, our governor, has introduced his budget for the next biennium. He proposed a budget that would boost state spending by $3.2 billion, with half of that going to K-12 education. And he laid down a marker on his priorities ahead of a possible re-election bid in 2022. So the 2-year spending plan, which is sure to face stiff resistance in the GOP-run legislature, includes restoring collective bargaining powers for many state employees after Republicans stripped them under former Governor Walker a decade ago. And then at the state superintendent primary election, the candidates are Deb Kerr and Jill Underly. They'll advance to the spring election after the primary, and that will determine who will be Wisconsin's next top education official. Underly, who had the backing of the state's largest teacher union, led the pool of 7 candidates with 27%. And Deb Kerr, who's backed by Republicans but calls herself a Democrat, came in a close second at 26%. So I think the final election will get very interesting between now and April for our state superintendent. And then moving to 7.3, our Board of Education recognitions at General Mitchell Elementary. They want to acknowledge and thank Head Custodian Deandra D. Quick and Head Secretary Lori Gaudinsky. I got it. Every day they are faced with unknown challenges and they always meet them head on. They help keep things running smoothly and in top-notch condition, and we appreciate them so much. At Pershing Elementary School, special thanks to Pershing's deeper learning coach and innovation coach, Nicole Ellman. She's a solid leader both in and out of the classroom. At West Milwaukee Intermediate School, congratulations to student services counselors Jenny Koshin and Corey Higgins and deeper learning coach Kelsey Nowak for teaching our 6th and 7th graders to complete their 21-22 Skyward course selections on Skyward. Students learn a new skill and they will use this out throughout high school. At Shared Journeys, Jenny Salazinski and Lisa Kohler received a certification in care and concern for children in crisis training. We also want to thank Bonnie Ludwig, who made blankets for a fundraiser and raised $100 for Shared Journeys. And then a shout out to our former student, Alex Nickel, who just opened Point West Barbershop in West Dallas. So that's pretty cool. Then from Leadership and Learning, a big thank you to Adam Hengel for his work on our charter school grant application. Adam did an excellent job of tying the application to our deeper learning work and giving us the best opportunity to receive grant funds. And then finally, Facilities Department, our winter weather has been brutal. Yes, so they want to thank Kevin Gracias and Brian Bosch for their great teamwork and dedication to snow removal. When the plows stopped working at Nathan Hale High School, Brian traveled over to help. Kevin worked quickly to install a new battery and things were up and running in record time. So we're thankful to our maintenance and custodial staff. They've been working hard to keep our walks and parking lots safe. And then finally, 7.4, just a couple little updates from me. There were no public comments at our last meeting, which was on February 8th. Tomorrow, so our facility advisory community team meets. It is going to be the first meeting where they really get introduced to various scenarios that start to kind of be solutions to the facility challenges. And we've prepared, and with our consultants, prepared a number of scenarios that they're going to work through, and it may be more than they want to consider, but we wanted to give them various options to think through about how we can answer the big questions we're asking them to help us with. And those are really, how many schools do we need and where should they be? How do we create schools that really support deeper learning? So the physical spaces that support learning. How do we create schools that our students and communities deserve, right? So I think we're at a time where we're doing good work, things are improving, we're financially stable, but I think our communities deserve school buildings they can point to with pride and that are places kids really find interesting and engaging. So how do we create the schools that we deserve? And then how do we do this in a way that's fiscally responsible? And so those are really the big questions we're asking the FACT team to take on. And again, that meeting is tomorrow. It'll be the first time they start really looking at solution sets, and that'll take a number of meetings to work through the various solutions. And we'll be asking members, then we meet in small groups to just do some discussion. And then we're using a red, yellow, green. And green is very interested in that particular scenario. Yellow is, I can live with it. And red is, that's not an option for me. right? So that's kind of how we're asking them to think about and give feedback. And then we'll collect all of that through quick polls and be able to then report all of that. And again, all of the information about this planning process is available on our website. And we encourage members of our community to follow that along, because it will lead to hopefully some big improvements in our facilities in years to come. And that completes the superintendent's update.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Lutzman. We'll move on to our item number 8, our board report. So taking a look at the board calendar. So today is February 22nd. We have a regular Board of Education meeting. On Monday, March 8th, beginning at 6 p.m., we have a regular Board of Education meeting. And then immediately following, we do have a workshop, Financial Stability and Efficiency, on pupil count, 2021-2022 enrollment projections, estimated revenue limit calculations, and preliminary budget projections. Monday, March 15th at 6 p.m., we have a workshop on financial stability and efficiency on our facilities update. And Monday, March 22nd, beginning at 6 p.m., a regular Board of Education meeting, and immediately following, we do have a closed session. And we do have some board committee reports this evening. So our College of Career Readiness has an update for us tonight. Bill?
Yep. Bill, I'll let you jump in and start if you'd like.
All right. So the last 2 Tuesdays we met and we covered the first reading of our Neola policies, the 2000s and the 5000s. We had questions on 2 of each. I'm not going to get into them, but we submitted our questions to Richard, and the first read is now complete. So we're done with that. At our March committee meeting, we plan to discuss starting standards-based grading committee. And in April, we'll be doing an update to our co-curricular plan, as we discussed in last Monday's workshop. So that's all I have.
Thank you. I'll move on to financial stability and efficiency.
That's me. So we met last Monday before the board meeting that we had last Monday to kind of talk through some questions that we had. So we are reviewing the Neola policies 6,000 through 8,000, 6,000, 7,000, and 8,000. And we talked through some questions that we had. Some were being submitted to Richard, may have already been submitted to Richard, and talked about some specific ones that were new. Some changes involving some policies that we had. And so just made sure we understood those and that we had any questions about that as well. And then we also discussed one of the great things with all the work that Caitlin and her staff have been doing, along with other administrative staff that we briefly touched on last week during the workshop, was being able to review our budget in year. And so that review has been done, and that has yielded some funds that we want to look to make some decisions on. And so that will be coming forward. But from the committee's perspective, we're looking at using those funds to reduce long-term costs is what we're looking at right now. So that's what we're gonna move forward with further discussion with the full board. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. And those are wonderful things to be hearing about in year and extra and money to be using for long-term costs. So great phrases to be hearing at this level and at this meeting. So thank you for that. All right, we move on to our consent agenda for the evening. There are 4 items. Item 9.1, the approval of minutes to the regular Board of Education meeting on February 8th and the special Board of Education meeting on February 15th. Employment summary, the supplementary contract, and the financial summary. Does anyone need anything separated? Heather, I can't hear you. Supplementary contracts? Anybody here, Heather? Okay. I don't hear any other changes to the 4 items on consent agenda. We would hit for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, consent agenda passes. On to our action items for this evening. Item 10.1 is a request to alter the school district boundaries. Dr. Lexman.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to share my screen again. So I gotta move that a little bit. Okay. So this is the school board presentation on the petition to detach property. And we heard from the petitioner. And so this is our response, and what we'd like the board to consider as you make a decision about how to respond to the petition. And like I typically do, a little bit of the agenda here. So talk just about the petition itself, look at the map, the property location. Then we'll go through the petitioner's rationale for detachment and our response. Then I'm going to present rationale to deny the petition for detachment. I'll talk a little bit on the impact on the educational welfare of students, which is part of what gets considered if the board denies it and the petitioner decides to appeal. And then our recommendation to deny petition to detach. So the petition itself, it's one parcel in the city of New Berlin. It's 12855 West North Lane in zip code 53157. And again, it's to detach from the West Allis West Milwaukee School District and attach to New Berlin. And the petition itself, the document that the petitioner filled in, it's all appropriate and completely signed. And so all of it is moving forward as it should be through the process. Oh, sorry. So the location of the property, this happens to be our high school boundaries map. And so you see Nathan Hale here on the green side and Central on the maroon side. And down here's a little part of New Berlin, that's part of our school district. And right in the middle, or almost right in the middle of that little area is where the property is located. And that's really important because it is possible for islands, of property to get approved, but on appeal, they will consider whether or not the boundaries are contiguous, right? So this disrupts the boundaries for sure. And so it's important to recognize that this particular parcel sits in the middle of a section of the school district. So the petitioner's rationale, as we captured them, they live in New Berlin and reside in Waukesha County, and the West Allis West Milwaukee School District name does not include New Berlin, and that's true. It also does not include Greenfield. It would be a really long school district name. Doesn't mean it can't be changed. It can be. The board has the right to do that. But what was adopted many years ago was West Allis, West Milwaukee, the two larger groups of students and the largest areas of property. And then the et al., which means and others, is how it gets included with New Berlin and Greenfield. And we're not the only school district in the state that has those kind of dynamics where the majority communities are represented in the name, and then the et al. Captures the other parcels that may be in other municipalities or villages. And the school name for the particular area of in New Berlin doesn't identify any specific community. So it's Hoover Elementary School. It's not it doesn't say West Allis Elementary School, right? So it's Hoover. So another part of the petitioner's rationale was the petitioner pays taxes toward the New Berlin Recreation Department, and that's true. New Berlin's Recreation Department is municipal and also pays for the West Allis West Milwaukee School District Recreation and Community Service Center because ours is part of the school district. But the reality is the family has the opportunity to use both. And he shared that he doesn't use our recreation and community services, but he has in the past, right? So they have engaged with us in the past, and hopefully that was a good experience with us. But given this situation and the other residents in that a part of New Berlin have the opportunity to participate in both. Another rationale wants his, and he shared this in public comment, wants his children back in school like in New Berlin, so meaning going back to school 5 days a week, and that he believed his children should be subject to Waukesha County guidance and data, not Milwaukee's. Well, we made the choice early on, following the guidance of the health department that covers the majority of our students and families, to do so differently, meaning we would have some metrics that cover one part of the school district and different metrics covering another part of the school district would create such confusion that it would not be manageable. And so we opted early on to follow the guidance of our health department that covers West Allis and West Milwaukee, and then Milwaukee County, where the majority of our families and students live, and Milwaukee County because it incorporates the city of Milwaukee, where we have about 1,000 students that come to us from the city of Milwaukee. So I think those decisions under these circumstances were entirely logical and manageable for us. And right now we offer hybrid and virtual instruction, and we will move to in-person when it's appropriate to do so. And just like I talked about in the reopening schools update. Another rationale, case law allows for island parcels of land to be added to other school districts. And that is true, right? So case law does allow for island parcels, but when reviewing petitions, districts are required to consider the topography and effect on boundaries. So districts are committed to take the effect on boundaries and topography into account, especially if an alteration results in the district being non-contiguous, which this would, right? And it would create some confusion for neighbors about which school district they belong to if there's one parcel detaches and attaches to New Berlin schools. Another part of the rationale, the petitioner worked through open enrollment to New Berlin School District, but he could not get busing due to a West Allis, West Milwaukee School District policy not to allow other districts to enter the district to provide transportation. That's true. And this is language right from the Department of Public Instruction. Parents are responsible to provide transportation to and from school in the non-resident school district, meaning for open enrollment, except that transportation is required in the child's IEP must be provided by the non-resident school district, right? So that if it's required in an IEP, and we do that now for a number of students that have transportation required in their IEP that are open enrolled with us. But we're not required to allow other districts to enter the district to provide transportation. And that's pretty consistent from district to district. That is a very common practice. And so, again, from DPI, a non-resident or resident school district is permitted but not required to provide transportation to open enrolled students. However, the district is prohibited from picking up or dropping off a pupil within the boundaries of the pupil's resident school district unless the resident school district agrees, and we don't. And that is so we do not encourage or promote more open enrollment out, right? Is why districts have that particular policy and practice in place. We have consistently denied requests for such transportation. And so it is not a, one family over another, unless it's related to an IEP, but we've been very consistent in this. I did look into all of that. And I also verified this last bullet with Aaron Norris. So at this time, the parent has not made a formal request to our district for an exception to the policy or requesting our agreement to change that would allow New Berlin School District to transport the student. Right? So, and that would be the process. So there hasn't been an actual request for us to do this. It's just been responded to that our practice has been consistently denied. Then the West Allis, West Milwaukee School District has a lower report card. This is true when only total scores are compared, right? So on its face, the answer is it's true. However, our school district is improving more quickly, and we serve a far higher number of students that are economically disadvantaged. And that may indicate that we're actually the higher performing school district. And when you look at the numbers, you can see that starting in 15-16, the last year we have report cards available is 18-19. And in that time, we went up 6 points, and New Berlin, I have it covered, I believe it was 1.4 points. And so just that comparison, when the petitioner brought up the school report cards on its face, yeah, New Berlin outperforms us, and we're working hard to catch up. But we're improving faster. And if you look at our economically disadvantaged percentages, and we're all very familiar with the fact that one of the predictors of school outcomes is family income. And we're in our equity work very much trying to disconnect the predictability of families in poverty to poor student outcomes, right? That's part of our work and our equity commitment, but our report card score says we're improving. And then I'm going to shift now to our rationale. So the administration's rationale to deny the petition for detachment. So we responded to what are the main points from the petitioner. And so this shifts us to deny our rationale to deny the petition. The homeowner in his presentation to the board acknowledged he was aware of what school district the house was in when they purchased the house. Right? So fully aware that that home is in the West Allis, West Milwaukee School District. The state open enrollment process allows for students to attend non-resident schools no matter where they live. And so going through open enrollment is an option. The property at issue is located in the center of the block within our district boundaries, and approval of this would set a concerning precedent, right? So that one of the concerns we have is a snowball effect that makes that particular neighborhood more and more confusing of which properties belong to which school district. Continuing, the property is also surrounded by properties and homes that remain in our district. So that, like I said, creates boundary confusion and uncertainty in that area. And it would result in the district boundary being non-contiguous and make our district territory unclear. And again, that fact that it would make the boundary non-contiguous is something that the board can consider when it is considering what our recommendation is to deny the petition. The property at issue, so this particular parcel, is actually closer to Hoover Elementary than to the nearest elementary school in New Berlin. And the petitioners brought up the concerns around transportation, and Hoover Elementary is closer. If approved and other properties detach, the racial and economic balance of our school district has the potential to shift significantly. And this also is something in the statutes that boards and on appeal gets considered. And so there's a couple slides here with some of the data that I think are important for the board to consider. So like I said, currently we have 257 students that live in the city of New Berlin that attend the West Allis, West Milwaukee School District. And you can see the demographic breakdown here of those students, right? So they live in New Berlin, but they are in school with us. And you see that the majority of the students, nearly 3/4 of them, are white students. It is a diverse group, and we love that, but the vast majority are white students. And those white students, when they're compared to the rest of the demographic groups, have a much lower rate of being economically disadvantaged, right? So just under 22%. And when you compare that to our overall district, and then I'm going to talk about, worst case scenario that the majority of these students would then, through this snowball effect, petition, get a parcel approved, move to New Berlin, what happens is concerning. And so the next slide here just compares New Berlin School District to us. Now, this is not quite an apples to apples comparison. I want to be absolutely clear here. The New Berlin is the 1819 demographics, and it's pulled from the DPI report card. Well, there hasn't been a report card since then, so we don't have access to their current data, but we've used our current data. And it hasn't shifted that much over these years, except for our economically disadvantaged number has increased much more quickly than New Berlin's. And you can see the makeup of our school district, where we are under half white. And New Berlin, our New Berlin students, that are students that live in New Berlin, again, are 3/4 white. And our students right now are at 62.2% economically disadvantaged. And in 1819, New Berlin, it was at 12.2. So you see kind of the dynamic of what would happen if a snowball effect starts to take place. And I want to be clear as I go through these bullets, I don't believe this is the petitioner's intent at all. That I'm not, there's no kind of attribution here at all to what the thinking is. I understand it that the petitioner is really interested in what's best for their children, and that's what we want every parent to do. But our job is to think about the overall school district. And if there is the snowball effect, there's some pretty dire consequences for us and our students. So what would happen because of the way the demographics play out with our students in our district, whiter, wealthier students move to a whiter and wealthier school district. Right? And again, it's not a judgment. That can happen. poorer students of color are concentrated in a higher poverty school district, right? So that could be a result. We have the potential to lose almost $351 million of equalized value if all of the property that's in the city of New Berlin that's in our school district detached. And when you have that amount of shift and loss of equalized value, the mill rate goes up on everybody else that's left in the school district. And Caitlin did these numbers for us. So if it happened this year, all of a sudden, all of New Berlin that is in our school district moved to the school district of New Berlin, the mill rate would not have been $8.75, it would have been $9.42. Right? So the idea of the snowball effect on the racial and economic balance and on the property taxpayers that remain in the school district can be pretty profound. And I think it was important that the board considers that. Then again, going on or continued our rationale to deny the petition. We currently have 257 students in our boundaries. So it's not a small number of kids. It's not as if it's 5 parcels or 5 homes. This is a significant number of students. All children who live in New Berlin and attend Hoover Elementary School, they're already being bused to school because it's an area without sidewalks. So we're required to provide that busing. Creating changes would add more busing within that area, meaning we probably would still have some students attending Hoover, or if Hoover were, if the enrollment declined significantly enough, we close Hoover, we start adding more transportation costs, and New Berlin adds transportation costs because now they're busing into that area as well. And so this would also then result in a loss of current and future revenue, especially if more properties in that area petition and join another school district. And I've said that a couple times. Finally, we're a landlocked district, which makes it important to maintain current boundaries. There is not room for us to grow anywhere, unlike some of our neighbors that are further out and they have area and space around them to continue to grow. We are landlocked. And our district is able to offer school children a school district operated recreation department for extracurricular activities, right? So it's all in one with us. Then going on, in 1819 school year, the school district of Berlin had 8.3% of its enrollment as students with disabilities. And currently we're at 16.3% of enrollment as students with disabilities. So again, this is the financial impact. So should New Berlin properties detach and we get a snowball effect, we're going to see a higher concentration of students with disabilities, and we're going to be required to serve them with fewer resources, negatively impacting all of our other students, right? Because once an IEP is built, we're required to provide the services in the IEP and to figure out how to fund those services, right? That's our responsibility, and we do that. But an increased concentration of students with disabilities and that requirement to serve them with fewer resources means there's fewer resources for everybody else. Right? So again, the financial impact can be significant. And then lastly, what can be considered is the impact on the educational welfare of students. So there's one here on detaching will have negative impact, and not detaching has some positive impact. So again, reduced funding for regular education students. I've already talked about that. Disruption of the racial balance and concentrating poorer students in our school district. It may lead to the closing of Hoover Elementary School, and it would likely lead to increased costs of transportations for the school district of New Berlin, and possibly for us, depending on what we would do with Hoover. And then denying detachment has some positive impacts. It provides the opportunity for more students to participate in our innovative learning experiences facilitated through deeper learning and project-based learning within West Allis, West Milwaukee. And we think we are really on the forefront of a lot of work going on in the country, but not a lot of work in our area with deeper learning and project-based learning. And so more kids having access to our innovative approaches is a benefit. Denying detachment maintains current neighborhood school boundaries and does not require new boundaries to be drawn, which would disrupt families. So again, if this were approved and we get a snowball effect, we probably we end up closing Hoover, or we have to redraw boundaries around elementary schools on that side of town. So this isn't just about impacting Hoover, it could impact a lot of families with new neighborhood school boundaries. And then not detaching also provides continuity of services for our students with special needs, our work with students with mental health, our gifted and talented students. So those things aren't disrupted by what potentially could happen. So then last slide. So our recommendation, it's also in the executive summary that was included in the board packet. So to approve a resolution denying, and that's important language there, right? So if the board supports this, it would be a move to approve the resolution to deny, and voting yes denies it, right? Because that's the language, and you can't have a negative motion. So you have to vote to approve something that denies it. So approve a resolution denying the petition to detach approximately 0.25 acres of land at 12855 West North Lane in New Berlin from the school district of West Allis, West Milwaukee et al., and attaching the property into the New Berlin School District for the reasons presented. And then there will be a second motion if the board approves the first motion, that would then authorize the board president to prepare and include with the resolution a summary of the rationale for the board's denial of the petition as discussed by the Board of Education tonight, right? So there's really two actions here. The first, we're recommending to approve the denial of the petition, and then authorize Stephanie to take the next steps in communicating that. And that sets us up with all of the necessary steps should the board approve this, and should the petitioner decide to appeal, right? Because there are additional steps and that's part of the process, and we respect that the petitioner can pursue in an appeal depending on the board's action this evening. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Members with questions on the presentation material, on the petition? Okay, so going to the notes that we just had available, I can move my screen around here. So Dr. Lexman, would we be reading this verbatim into record? Would I be making the motion?
Anybody can make the motion, but I think it makes sense to read it entirely into the record.
Okay, so the motion would be to approve a resolution denying the petition to detach approximately 0.25 acres of land at 12855 West North Lane, New Berlin, from the school district of West Allis, West Milwaukee et al., and attaching the property into the New Berlin School District for the reasons presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Additional comments or questions on the motion?
Stephanie,
Sir.
Per our discussion on Friday, I was going to recuse myself.
Yes. Thank you, Gary. All right, there were no additional comments or questions, so all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. And there's a second resolution or second motion to authorize the board president to prepare and include with the resolution a summary of the rationale for the board denial petition as discussed by the board tonight.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, thank you, everybody. All right, next item on our agenda this evening is item 10.2, the approval of the 2019-2020 audit report. Ms. Windler.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So last week, our auditors joined us to present the results of our 1920 audit, so last year, and they presented the progress that we made over the last couple of years. There's a financial audit report and an accompanying report, so our audited financial statements and an accompanying report that can be found both on our website and attached to the agenda for this evening's meeting. And just a couple highlights from what the auditors presented. We have met one of our strategic planning goals and are well on our way to another. So we've now have a fund balance of nearly 24% of our Fund 10 expenditures. So that strategic planning goal we have met, and then we are well on our way to decreased audit findings, which essentially means that we have increased internal controls. So we now went from 10 in 18-19 down to 4 in 19-20. And the strategic planning goals get down to 3. So we are well on our way to that one. And just want to say once again, thank you to our business office team who has led all the progress reflected in this report, as well as our administration, our leadership, and our secretarial team, who has implemented the many changes that in our procedures that we've worked through over the last couple of years. So with that, I will welcome any questions and look for the board's approval.
Wonderful. Questions for Caitlin? It was a great presentation last week. I think it was very thorough and very helpful. And again, having these conversations throughout the year so that when this information comes to us, it's nothing's a surprise, that it's clear the expectations are there, which is wonderful. So that consistency is fantastic. Look forward to that being the norm going forward. So, all right. So no other comments or questions for Caitlin? We would then look for a motion.
To approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any final questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, that passes. Great. Thank you. All right, so that is the end of our meeting tonight. We would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
I'll fight for those motions. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.